Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for this episode of my Top 10 series. Today's episode is my top 10 biggest step down in quality between albums. I've already done a pretty similar list to this one on my channel before, except the opposite end of things. I've already done my top 10 biggest step up in quality between albums. And in comparison, I feel like this was kind of a harder list to put together. I will link the other video in the description below. But I have spoken about in these music topic videos before, so maybe you guys do or don't already know. But I don't pick up albums or add albums to my collection that I don't enjoy, at least on some sort of level. Don't get me wrong, I do have albums in my collection that I've grown out of over time, or my opinions on them have changed. Even if it's a band that I fucking love, if it's an album that I don't see myself coming back to in the future and not really caring for, I'm not going to go out and pick it up. If it was a case of picking up albums, just willy-nilly to give them a first-time listen, or, I'm not overly in love with them, but I'll still grab them, there would be plenty to choose from. But it doesn't feel right to me because a lot of the albums that I've passed on, they were so many years back. I haven't re-listened to them in a long time just because, as I said, I didn't have an interest to come back to them, so I'm not too familiar with them. So today's step down in qualities are actually going to be albums that I still actually own in my collection, which I know sounds weird because, like I said, I liked them enough once upon a time to still add them to my collection, but still they're a step down from the album that came beforehand. The only reason I decided to do that is because at least I'm still somewhat familiar with what I'm talking about. Like I said, if I'm choosing albums that I passed on years back, I'm just making up reasons why I feel like it's a step down just because I haven't revisited them. So this way, it's still technically a step down in quality, but it's something that I know what I'm actually talking about. So I just wanted to put that out there. But one last thing I wanted to disclose before we get into this top 10 is, like last time, and you may have already put this together in your head, they need to be consecutive albums. I can't be comparing an artist's second album with their fifth album. It needs to be the consecutive albums in a row. That's why it's a step down in quality between albums. I just wanted to put that out there to clarify. I'm sure you guys already put that together, but without delaying any longer, let's get into this list. My top 10 biggest step down in quality between albums. Starting off my list, coming in at my number 10 is the band Bearings with their albums Hello It's You, which was followed by The Best Part About Being Human. Now, it actually took me a while to sink my teeth into Hello It's You. Originally, when it first came out, I actually thought it was going to be an album that I skipped on. It took me a little while to start to find enjoyment with this album, but obviously it eventually grew on me, and I actually now hold this album in quite high regard. I was kind of hoping it was going to be the same for their follow-up being The Best Part About Being Human. This album's been out for a year now, and still it hasn't really made much moves on me. There are a couple of songs that have grown on me more over time, but it's still mainly the ones that I listened to first, the ones that sort of grabbed my attention to pick up this album. Like I said, it's only been a year. I know it hasn't been the longest time, but I was hoping to sort of have a bit more of an impact, and at the moment it just still feels like it's sitting around an average sort of rating for me, when this one, as I said, I hold in quite high regard as of now. So coming in at my number 10 spot, I have the band Bearings with Hello It's You, followed by The Best Part About Being Human. Coming in at my number 9 is Post Malone and his albums Hollywood Is Bleeding, followed by 12 Carat Toothache. Now, this is one that you could just say overall has been a step down in quality of music in general. His first 3 albums, regardless of whichever one's your favourite, are all fairly good, but since Hollywood's Bleeding, his latest 2 albums have definitely dropped in quality, at least in my opinion. And you'll hear people make arguments, oh, he had some big hits off his last 2 LPs. Yeah, sure, but taking a deeper dive, breaking down the rest of the track list, there's a lot of forgettable and really skippable stuff, and that's the case here with 12 Carat Toothache. It does have songs that hold up, but much more of the back catalogue is kind of forgettable if I'm being honest. With Hollywood's Bleeding, The hits are arguably some of Post Malone's best to date, and even if the remainder of the songs aren't as strong, at least, they're somewhat interesting. With 12 Carat Toothache, the back catalogue in comparison feels kind of lifeless and feels like it's just sort of checking the boxes, whether it's checking the box of having a featured artist or just hitting the song count that's needed for the record. I don't know, but it definitely feels like it's a step down in quality in general, but a step down from Hollywood's Bleeding. So my number 9 goes to Post Malone and his albums Hollywood is Bleeding, followed by 12 Carat Toothache. Coming in at my number 8 is the band Waterparks with their albums Double Dare, which was followed up by Entertainment. Now, if you've been watching my channel recently and you've seen my latest collection update video, you guys would know I've only just sort of got my hands on a physical copy of Entertainment, but don't let that fool you. I've known of this album ever since it came out back in 2018. But I know this is actually going to sound weird considering the list that we're doing today, but after picking it up and listening to it in full again, it's actually not as bad of an album as I remember it being. Unfortunately, the list is still stepped down in quality, and to be fair, it's still a step down from the band's debut full-length album being Double Dare. Double Dare to me is just banger after banger, fun track after fun track. Each song feels like something different, and then the album overall is just really easy to have on replay and come back to. Where, like I said, Entertainment is still pretty good, but it's just more so average in comparison when you're comparing it to one of the band's better albums, if not their best full length. So just following the rules of this list, and explaining why it's probably not higher on this list either. Still a good album, but a step down in quality. So here at my number 8, I have the band Waterparks with Double Dare, which was followed by Entertainment. For my number 7, I have the band With Confidence and their albums Love and Loathing, which was followed by their self-titled. With Confidence are a really underrated Australian pop punk / pop rock band who honestly I don't think have dropped a terrible album, if I'm being honest. But for me, Love and Loathing is, pun not intended, confidently the band's peak album. Good consistency, really easy to revisit. Some of my personal favourite tracks from the band are off this album, and it's also them flexing their diversity for me. But with the following self-titled album, though again I don't think it's terrible, it is a step down, and I'd probably say it's the band's weakest of their 3 full-length albums. Like I said again, I don't think overall there is a terrible album, but what we are comparing here is the band's best to the band's worst, and that's why I do think it's a step down in quality. There honestly are some songs that I think are okay off this self-titled, but then there are a couple that I'd say I don't really care for at all. And overall, the album just kind of gives me a different vibe, more of a soft rock. I always describe this album to sounding like the band Train, and I'm honestly not even that familiar with the band Train, but for some reason Train has always been a band that kind of irks me. They're sort of weird with their pop rock dad sort of vibes. I don't know, it kind of scares me a little bit, Train. And that's what this album kind of gives me at times, where with their earlier stuff like Love and Loathing, it was a bit more youthful and had a bit more flair and kick to it. So my number 7 goes to the band With Confidence and their albums Love and Loathing, which was followed by their self-titled. Coming in at my number 6 spot is the band Bring Me the Horizon with their albums That's the Spirit, which was followed by Ammo. If I made this list back when Ammo had first come out, this would have been a lot higher on this ranking because I used to not be a fan of Ammo at all. And I still believe it's probably the band's worst album since Sempiternal. I say Sempiternal because that's probably most people's pick for the band's best album. But Ammo has obviously grown on me. I have it now in my collection and everything, but we ain't comparing it to Sempiternal. What we're comparing it to is actually the follow-up album, which also happens to be my personal favourite album by the band, being That's the Spirit. And it's very much a case of what I had with my previously mentioned band With Confidence. What we're doing here is pretty much comparing my favourite Bring Me the Horizon album with my least favourite. So the difference is just sort of too big to ignore and not feature on this list. Like I was saying before, Ammo has obviously grown on me, but comparing it to That's the Spirit, it's sort of an easy pick for a drop in quality here. A lot of people would say that That's the Spirit was the first of the band, putting out an album with a new sound, starting to change, the formula and everything. But Ammo was just too big of a jump in a different direction, while also not quite cracking the code with what they've been able to now make work with some of their newer albums. So I'm sort of starting to ramble with their newer stuff here, but as I said, it's too big of a step down in quality between albums here for me. So my number 6 goes to Bring Me the Horizon with That's the Spirit, which was followed by Ammo. Coming in at my number 5 is the band Trophy Eyes and their albums The American Dream, which was followed by Suicide and Sunshine. Now this one did kind of hurt, if I'm being honest, to include on this list, because Suicide and Sunshine is actually not that bad of an album, and I know I've said that about a lot of entries and comparisons that we've gone through so far, but for a while I was sort of locked in denial of just thinking, oh, it's only disappointing. And in a way, yes, it still kind of is. But for a while, I was like, meh, is it really a step down in quality? But then I remembered I'm comparing it to the album that came beforehand, The American Dream, and unfortunately, yes, it is a step down in quality, and I just got to accept that. I've done a full-length review of The American Dream. I've praised this album and sung how much I love this album from the hilltops. I fucking love The American Dream. And it was a very long wait till we got Suicide and Sunshine. And again, I don't think it's a bad album at all, but in comparison, I do feel like it's a little more bland, especially in the back catalogue. It actually had one of the better lineup of singles in preparation for the album's release, but I don't know, I feel like it's an album that will grow on me more over time, the more I listen to it, because Trophy Eyes, I just fucking love that band, and it's only been a year since its release. But I do know both of these albums well enough to be a fair judge, and I just got to accept right now it is a step down in quality. So coming in at my number 5 is the band Trophy Eyes and their albums The American Dream, which was followed by Suicide and Sunshine. Coming in at my number 4 is the band The Amity Affliction with their albums Everyone Loves You Once You Leave Them, followed by Not Without My Ghosts. Back to back with bands who had albums last year that were kind of step downs in quality. The only difference here is Trophy Eyes to me gave a better effort with an album last year compared to Amity did with Not Without My Ghosts. The album isn't like they flipped styles or tried experimenting or anything. It's actually pretty similar style-wise to when the band are at their best, but the execution with songs that we get here off this album just don't hit, and I could probably make a case for a handful of songs being okay, but when I need to try and make a case, that isn't really the best sign. But with the previous album, Everyone Loves You Once You Leave Them, man, this album was a fucking banger. It came following the album Misery, which actually was something different and something experimental, and though it didn't fail, it wasn't the band in their best form. But when Everyone Loves You Once You Leave Them dropped, it brought back the band's best, and with guns blazing and still delivering songs that you could consider to be some of the band's best to date, Soak Me and Bleach. But there is not a single song off Not Without My Ghost that reached that level, and it's not another example of an album being just disappointing, though it is. I do genuinely feel like it is a step down in quality. So again, my number 4 goes to The Amity Affliction with their albums Everyone Loves You Once You Leave Them, followed by Not Without My Ghosts. Coming in at my number 3 is one of, if not my favourite band of all time, Fall Out Boy, and their albums Folie à Deux, followed by Save Rock and Roll. This pick was pretty much a given to make this list, if I'm being honest. Folie à Deux is a perfect album in my eyes. I fucking love this album. It's a personal favourite of mine. I've done a full-length review of this album as well. I love it. Save Rock and Roll, nah, it's fine. It's not a bad album again, but it is very average. Now, I will out myself. When Save Rock and Roll first came out, I was all over this album. I fucking frothed this album. But very quickly, once the shine of something new had worn off, I came to quickly realize it just does not hold a candle to some of the band's best work. If I had to call it, I'd probably say as a whole of their discography, Save Rock and Roll is probably the second weakest album, aside from Mania, which I genuinely think is a terrible album, hence not having it in my collection. And I still hear some people say, Save Rock and Roll isn't that bad, but most of the time they point to the singles, songs like My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark and The Phoenix, and to be completely honest, those songs don't always have me coming back. If I'm going to pick favourites of this one, I'm going to say Rat-a-Tat, or maybe Just One Yesterday, something like that, Alone Together. But, like I said, comparing the band's best album in my eyes to their second weakest, unfortunately, it's an obvious step down in quality. So my number 3 goes to Fall Out Boy and their albums Folie à Deux, which was followed by Save Rock and Roll. For my number 2 pick, I have the band Beartooth with their albums Disgusting, which was followed by Aggressive. Aggressive, to not beat around the bush, comparing it to Disgusting, it just doesn't come close for me. And the thing is, Aggressive, again, is kind of fine. It's definitely a passable record, a solid entry to, a heavy subgenre for sure. But comparing it to Disgusting, which is an album that legitimately shook my understanding of what an album like this could be, it really is no contest. I've reviewed Disgusting in full, and it's legitimately close to a perfect album. And again, when you're comparing an album this good to something that is just passable, maybe slightly above average, again, it's hard to make a comparison, and it definitely, to me, is a step down in quality. I've listened to Aggressive since it's come out, and there are a few songs that grabbed me at first, but they sort of lost their traction over time. Where on the other album, being Disgusting, it's just tune after tune. I can only think of maybe 2 tracks that don't quite match the consistency, being the last 2 songs, Dead and Sick and Disgusting. But for me, again, I feel like it's no contest. This album just really fucking blew me away since it first came out, and I still can listen to this album super easy. The follow-up, however, has never really rung my bell, so coming in at my number 2, I have the band Beartooth and their albums Disgusting, which was followed by Aggressive. And finally, reaching my number 1, here I have the band Falling in Reverse with their albums The Drug in Me Is You, which was followed by Fashionably Late. Say what you want about Falling in Reverse's debut album being The Drug in Me Is You, because I know it has its haters, and yes, probably on paper it's not a great album, but take it for what it is, a product of its time, something fun, an aesthetic, an era, however you want to word it. I really like this album, me personally, but once upon a time I thought the same about Fashionably Late. But like I said, one in my eyes has stood the test of time, where the other one kind of has not. Fashionably Late really doesn't have much that I want to come back to besides the title track, because I genuinely think Fashionably Late is a really ridiculously catchy song. I fucking love it to this day, and maybe a couple of others, but whatever Ronnie and the gang were doing by switching it up, it just kind of grew old on me quicker, and in the long run just didn't hold up, and there isn't really much to revisit in my eyes for Fashionably Late. Obviously they've kept the same sort of style, or close to that style for the long run, and some of the stuff that I've heard actually recently, some of their newer stuff, kind of sounds alright, or at least it sounds kind of fun. So maybe they've worked out the kinks and this was their first attempt and it was just too much too early. But not to overlook the obvious too. My taste in music is better suited to The Drug in Me Is You. And like the list is saying, I do feel like this was a step down in quality. So coming in at my number one is the band Falling in Reverse with their album The Drug in Me Is You, which was then followed by Fashionably Late. So there we go, guys, through my list of top 10 biggest step down in quality between albums, like I normally do when I reach this part of the video. First of all, if you're still watching, thank you, but I normally do a quick little recap, so let's do that now. Coming in at my number 10 was the band Bearings with their albums Hello It's You, followed by The Best Part About Being Human. My number 9 was Post Malone with his albums Hollywood Is Bleeding, which was followed by 12 Carat Toothache. My number 8 went to Waterparks with their albums Double Dare, which was followed by Entertainment. My number 7 went to the band With Confidence with their albums Love and Loathing, which was followed by the self-titled With Confidence. My number 6 went to the band Bring Me the Horizon with their albums That's the Spirit, which was followed by Ammo. My number 5 was Trophy Eyes with their albums The American Dream, which was followed by Suicide and Sunshine. My number 4 went to The Amity Affliction with their albums Everyone Loves You Once You Leave Them, which was followed by Not Without My Ghosts. Getting into my top 3, which was headed by Fall Out Boy with their albums Folie à Deux, which was followed by Save Rock and Roll. Sorry, I don't know why I held that one up so weird. My number 2 went to the band Beartooth with their albums Disgusting, which was followed by Aggressive. And my number 1 for biggest step down in quality between albums went to the band Falling in Reverse and their albums The Drug in Me Is You, which was followed by Fashionably Late. So like I said, if you've stuck around this far in the video, I'd like to thank you guys. If you have any opinions on any of the albums that I brought up in this video, feel free to let me know. If you just want to talk about any bands that you think I like and, you know, put in your 2 cents, go for it, guys. But like I said, I'll just be super impressed in general if you've stuck around this far, especially for my music content on this channel. I sort of had a null for a while, even on my horror content. So if you're watching this music stuff and you've stuck around this far, you know, make sure to give this video a like or leave a comment, just some sort of support. I would really appreciate it, guys. But either way, I'll see you for another video soon. Make sure you guys are all staying safe out there. Thank you for watching, and like I said, I'll see you for some more content soon, guys.